Got that fast. Okay, excited to have all of you all join us today. Brenda and I are excited for all of the information we get to share with you all. I know only Imani, I think, on this call. So it'll be great to get to know all of you a little bit more, and we'll be together for the next hour and a half-ish. And so we have a lot of great information to share with you all, stories to share, but then also we'll be here for answering questions. Brent and I both have been on staff. I think we're going into like our 9th year on staff, something like that.
It should, no, it's 7 for me and 9 for you.
Oh, 9 for me. Okay. So 9 and 7 you're going into your 7th year or you're going into your 8th year?
7, because I'm about to take the sabbatical. Boy, it's clean sabbatical. I can't wait.
I'm about to sabbatical it too. Okay. So yeah, we will be so we have a lot of experience that we can share with you all. And so we're here to answer questions and stuff for you as well. So we're gonna start with prayer, and then Brent will introduce himself, and then I'll share a little bit about me. Brent, can you open us in prayer?
Yeah. And if you hear something in the background, that's like the landscaping people. So apologies, but Dad, thank you for my sisters on the call today. Lord, would your spirit be among us? Would you give us wisdom? If there's anything that's like purely human wisdom is stupid, would you cause them to forget? But if there's anything that's from you, it's helpful, encouraging, would you plant it deep and cause it to bear fruit? Yeah, and Lord, we see you do more in MPD than we have had hope to expect. We pray all this in your name. Amen.
Amen. All right. Take it away, Brent.
Cool. My name is Brent. That's Bay. We just got married about a year ago, like right as quarantine hit. So I got to quarantine with my wife. I was feeling myself. I'm transitioning from CSM into some larger, actually, MPD work, which is a little non-specific because it's not, we're not quite sure what that means yet, but mostly I will be doing my best to get Black and brown people funded in the movement. So I'm really excited about that, but have been at UNC Charlotte in North Carolina for the last 6 years and been loving it. So.
Awesome. Next slide. It won't let me go to the next slide. Let's do this. Make it easier. Boom.
Fair enough. That works. Should I be going into this now or should we be?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So overall for my portion, hopefully gonna hit on these 3 ideas. Whoa, someone's calling me. That's unacceptable. Let me put my do not disturb on. There we go. Sorry about that. So one would be to context shape your MPD appointments by generation, which largely just means like as you get older, or as you're meeting with people who are older and in different generations, like that will change a bit of how you meet. And the younger or the different generations that you're in, you can be more relaxed and actually it's probably better to treat them less formally. That's what I found. Embrace your blackness or personal context as a tool. Like largely, if we're fitting within the averages, most of our donors are going to be white people or people of means, and that means as unfortunate as that is, that we are like we're being the black people. Like you're being the black person that's part of a largely white evangelical ministry, and in some ways getting to undo the caricature of a black person, and that actually has a lot of power if we lean into it. Obviously there's healthy and unhealthy ways to do it, but it's something to be acknowledged. I'm not sure I I would have some of the relationships I had if I wasn't able to just acknowledge, like, hey, I'm the black guy. Okay, so like, let's keep it hot. You know I'm black. I know I'm black, and that part of this meeting is with that in mind. You're trying to figure out what that means for me, and I can use that. And then just relational is always better than transactional. People give to people they like. InterVarsity does a really good job of trying to prepare us generally, but um, it is still an organization that has its own desires and means, and it just means that sometimes we're not being told enough that whatever you can do to help people like you as a person, that's the best thing to do. And I would say that 90% of my donors do not care about university. They just don't. If your donor isn't an alumni or wasn't a product of a campus ministry, they probably don't care. And spending a lot of time trying to get them to care may or may not be fruitful. Um, and so there's a huge opportunity there if we can lean into it. So um, that's a quick little snapshot of what we're going to be getting into.
Thanks. So thanks, Brent, for kind of giving some wisdom of what you've learned over these years of MPD. And myself, my name is Shalir Mule Kavindio. In that picture is my husband, Cosmas, and our 8-month-old. In that picture, I think he's 7 months, but he's 8 months now. And that is CJ, Cosmas Jr. So if I get up a couple of times, I am a full-time staff worker who's also a full-time stay-at-home mom. And so my sister is watching Kim, but things happen. So yeah, so that's my little family. I'm also a dog mom of 2, my 2 little puppies. So yeah, I serve as the Red River Regional Director of Black Campus Ministries. So if you guys don't know, Red River is Texas, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Louisiana. And so I serve over all of the Black Campus Ministries work that we have across the 4 states at our different HBCUs, but then also at our predominantly white institutions. And so I get to work with the staff and the students and plan out our regional conference and serve a part of our leadership team. And so we're going to be talking a lot when we get to my portion, we're going to be talking about what it looks like to navigate some of those relationships that you'll have to connect with as a part of MPD. But just a few little, I guess, tidbits of like, what have I learned since being a part of InterVarsity and having to raise support? These are kind of like some, I guess, mantras that I have. So one is elevate the idea of small chunks for a big payoff, realizing that some of the little small steps that you're taking with people is what's gonna ultimately set you up for the big payoff in the end, which is them serving as a partner for you. But then also realizing when I'm coaching people don't have to start off giving $30, $50, $100 a month. I now am in this, like, I got to this space where the way our system is set up, the smallest a person can give you is $10 a month. So I try to get people to at least sign up for $10 a month and trust that as they learn more about the ministry, then they'll start giving, 100, 200, whatever. And I've had people start at 10, and now, I mean, it's been several years. Now they're giving those larger amounts, but realize the small chunks is fine. At the end of the day, you just want to get to the finish line, which is being raising your full budget. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I know it's hard to follow up. I know it feels like you're like, I don't know, bothering people, but until you get a firm no, to me, they're still at play, right? Like, you can still reach out to them, you still connect with them. And I used to kind of be in that mindset of, oh, okay, yeah, I reached out a couple of times and they told me they're thinking about it. And then I would just kind of leave them alone and not reach out to them for a whole nother year. But a few years ago, I started getting coached. And one thing my coach told me was like, Shalir, you give up on people too easily. And so there are people that I've had to follow up with for a whole year. And then finally they set up their gift. And almost always they're like, thank you for reminding me. Like, I'll say, I'm so sorry I was bothering her. Like, it's totally not a bother. I just kept forgetting. And then I would see your message and then I would remember, but then something would happen and then I didn't get it set up. And so if I took those people not realizing that they were still interested and just assumed that them not setting up the gift or them not following up meant that they were saying no, then I would have lost out on a lot of the people that are partnering with me now. And so until you get a firm, no, I'm not interested, no, I can't do this, no, then to me, they're still at play. And then lastly, and I think this was a big one for me, I used to have this whole, I feel like I'm begging people for money. And then I realized people pay for Netflix. People pay for a Big Mac. Like people pay to go to the movies. People pay $300 to go see Beyonce in concert. They could give me that $300 and I'm going to be changing the life of a college student. I am worth the investment. Like that was something, it took me a while to get to that place, but I realized people give their money to whatever they want to invest in. And if that means I'm somebody they want to invest in because they want to see God's kingdom grow, I'm totally worth it too. I'm worth the same thing as your Netflix subscription, right? And so you and your ministry is worth the investment. Like Jesus literally was just out there. And he was just showing up at people's houses and hoping they will welcome him in so he can eat. He was worth the investment. Paul did the same thing as a missionary. And so you and your ministry are worth the investment. And so as we're going through today, think of, you've heard some things that Brent has shared already and some things that I've just shared, but just know that we've been through there. We've been through the whole, like, man, should I stay on staff? Did God really call me? Do these people really care about me? Oh, I can't believe they said no, but then I saw them go on that vacation. Like we went through all those things, but we're still here, all these years later. And so we both believe that, like, we're not going to be able to give you everything. There are going to be things that the Lord is going to teach you in this process, but we pray that, like, what you receive today will hopefully help you as you're moving forward in your MPD journey. And so we're going to take a little break from us talking, and we're going to give you an opportunity to introduce yourselves. So if we can just very quickly, if we can share your name, what you're doing, how long you've been on staff, where you are, and then just one word right now just to describe your MPD journey. And I'm just going to kind of shout people's names out, and then you can unmute yourselves and share. Oops. And then we will go into the content. So Jasmine, you are the first one on my screen. So if you can share who you are, your position, how long you've been on staff, where you are, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. My name is Jasmine, and I am full-time campus staff in the Bronx and Westchester area. Been on staff. So last year I was an intern. So that was my first year. And so I'm just entering my second year full-time. But yeah, I'm on staff in New York City in the Bronx and Westchester area at SUNY Purchase College and Fordham University. And one word to describe my MPD journey would be abundance.
Amen. Amen. Imani.
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Imani, and I just wrapped up my internship year and I'm stepping into full-time staff. I'm within the greater Los Angeles area, so I work with Cal State Northridge and Pierce Community College out in the Valley. And one word to describe my MPD journey, I would say resilience, because right now I'm just like, I'm ready to give up, but I'm like so close to being fully funded. Yeah.
Love it. Thank you. India.
Hey y'all, my name is India. This is my first year, so I'm an intern, and I will be working at the AUC in Atlanta. So I'll be working with Spelman, Clark Atlanta, and Morehouse, and Morris Brown. People always forget about Morris Brown. And one word. Can I just give you interesting for now? I may change it by the end of this conversation, but I'm gonna give you interesting.
Love it. Love it. Giovanni. Did I say
Hey
that right?
everyone. Yeah, you did.
Okay, go me.
My name is Giovanni Smith. I am the Director of Global Programs. I'm remote. So I am based out of Atlanta. I've only been on staff for, I'm coming up on a month. And one word to describe my MPD journey is chaotic.
I can resonate with that. That's what it used to be for me. Is it Nisha or Nisha?
Oh, I'm sorry. Nisha?
Nisha, okay.
Yeah. So my position is the payroll administrator and HR coordinator. So I am on staff at the NSC, and I've been on staff for about a year. I started as a temp in March of last year, and then came on staff officially in September. So I count it from March. So it's been a little over a year. So I'm on staff at the NSC, so I don't have a campus, but as you know, we're located in Madison. And my MPD journey, I would say, is different.
Cool. Letitia or Letitia?
She may not be on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Christina.
I know Christina said she was in the car. So.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Sorry. I'm driving to pick up my mom. My name is Christina. It's nice to meet you all. I'm on staff in Newark, New Jersey. So at Rutgers, Newark, Pillar College, Essex County Community, and NJIT. And I'm coming up on my second year. And then one word to describe my MPD journey has been compelling.
Wow. Steep. All right. And last but not least, Crystal.
Hi, everyone. My name is Crystal. I am a Red River area admin, and one word to describe my MPD journey so far is basically patience, just waiting for that that one person to start giving.
Great. Brent, you can take it on.
Cool. So what I want to spend the bulk of the time on is of my time on is talking about like authentic ministry and gifts in MPD. So we can actually go to the 9th slide. Yeah, that'll work. So I'll share a little bit about my own MPD journey, but even to cut ahead would be I've come to like recognize. So I don't know what your guys' intern training or MPD training was like, but there's a lot of like almost like this. I wouldn't call it propaganda, but like this mantra of hey, MPD is a ministry, and I'm like, stop lying. It's not ministry. This is fundraising, okay? And I always had that sort of tension of like, okay, we're calling this something because we're Christians. We're supposed to call it something spiritual, but it does not feel spiritual because when I'm trying to cut this check and my rent is due, there's nothing spiritual about this, right? To me, right? And so I didn't ever. I absorbed that language of MPD as ministry, but it was really hard for me to see it as ministry. And so that's actually a big part of my story. So my first 3 years, I hated MPD with a passion, as one does, and I was not funded. It was pretty difficult for me to get funded for all of the normal reasons, like just hard, and especially coming from like out of the largely Black community, which has very little visibility and understanding of campus ministry in general and sort of mission work and just all of these different things. There's not to mention the socioeconomics. So it's really difficult. And mostly I felt like it was taking me away from campus. Like I just like it was the tax on my time as a staff worker. So going into my 4th year, I had this huge mental shift where I started to really see MPD as ministry. And that changed everything. I've been funded ever since. And in fact, my RD says, you know, he says I'm like the most improved, but he also said that I'm the first staff he's ever had to tell to stop fundraising, you know. Because now it's just what I do now because I see it as ministry. And so for me, that really, really, really helped. And in particular, I have some gifts in evangelism. So when I started treating MPD like it was evangelism, like things completely, because I'm like, I can do ministry. This is why I signed up, you know, like I did not sign up to fundraise. But I did sign up to do ministry with students. And when I just started to sort of widen my perspective and say, okay, what if the dollars don't matter? And what if I treat my MPD like I'm doing ministry just with older people, right? And for me in particular, and obviously I'm not saying that exact same shift is necessary for you, but like probably something in that area could be really, really helpful. And that shift like changed everything for me. And so a good story to illustrate that is Mike. Mike is an investment advisor. I live in Charlotte, which is quickly becoming the banking center of America. It's right behind New York, and it will probably pass here soon. So there's a lot of bankers, a lot of money, and constant influx of money. But Mike was an investment advisor, and we got connected in a roundabout way, but I asked him to contribute, to give, and he gave me $25, right? Not $25 a month, you know, $25 as in a one-time donation of $25. And low key, I was offended. And by low key, I mean high key. I was really pissed. And I was like, bro, correct. The audacity. Like, wow, he really tried it. And so, but this was right around that shift for me. And so I'm like, you know what? Whatever. I'm just going to do my best to connect with Mike. So we end up hanging out for about a year. And later in the Q&A, you can ask like more detailed questions because I don't want to like go over. But we started having meetings pretty regularly, once every 6 to 8 weeks, meeting up for lunch. He wanted to talk about politics. It's the Trump election year. He's a big Republican. It's the South. Everyone's a Christian. Nobody knows Jesus. So there's a lot of dynamics going on. And I'm the black guy who's like, oh, now I have a black guy to talk to politics about with, you know. So it was just this sort of non-traditional, weird relationship. And when he gave the $25, I just decided like, okay, he's not giving money anyways. If I'm gonna meet up with him, then I'm gonna be myself. I have nothing to lose. I'm gonna be myself all the way through, and I'm gonna have a good time. And I'm just gonna treat it as ministry. And started to do what we do. Started to learn more about his story, about his relationship with his dad, about his relationship with his kids, about, you know, just normal stuff. And as I'm going, I'm sharing stories about what I'm seeing in the chapter and what I'm trying to do, and he's intrigued. And so 1 year turns to two. I asked him to donate again. He gives $75. I'm very angry. I'm like, you know what? Whatever, right? And so we keep building this relationship. And then the third time I asked, he gave $7,000, and which is more than $75, as you might have caught. He gave 7,000, and then he gave 8, and then he gave 10. And our most recent conversation was, I will give you, every time you ask, I will give you more. That's my goal, you know, that he this last year. So he's given 10 at the moment. And Mike is really emblematic of the shift for me, because a week ago, I was praying for Mike and he was crying because of something in his life, but he calls me. Like, he goes to church, he has a pastor, but his pastor never sits down with him for an hour and a half to talk about, you know what I'm saying? Like, he doesn't do that with his pastor. And we're friends. I wouldn't say that I'm his pastor, but I operate in that way for him, right? Like, we were at breakfast and he broke down crying about his relationship with his dad and how he's 65 maybe, you know, but he's crying to a 27-year-old about his dad. But he can do that because we have this relationship, and it's been ministry the whole time. And so I started doing that with everyone. It's just been like, you know what? I don't care about the money. I'm good at ministry. I'm good at pastoring. I'm good at being in these spaces and advocating and evangelizing. And so that's what I started doing with some of my supporters. Like, hey, like, I'll go. Like, have you ever evangelized before? Like, no. Okay, well, come with me. Let's go to lunch and I'll show you. Or do you know what it's like to pray? And they're like, I mean, yeah, I pray, but I don't really pray out loud. And, you know, so I'm like, oh, well, let me introduce you to this type of prayer, right? So just these normal things I would have done with students. Started doing that, and put the monetary ask in the back burner. And that just changed everything. And so what that also led to is advocacy rather than finances, right? When finances aren't the first thing I'm thinking about, now I have more time to build a relationship and more time to think about, well, who do you know that you can connect me to? And so Mike has not only given a lot of money, he's also connected me to friends because I have this advocate in Mike who's like, bro, like Brent is the real deal. I don't know nothing about and he'll tell you, he's like, Brent, if you left InterVarsity tomorrow, I would say good riddance because I don't think they pay you enough. I do not like InterVarsity. I'm not about it, right? I like what you do with students, but you could be doing it with anybody, and I'd support you because I really think you're a good ministry. Like you're the ministry. I don't care anything about InterVarsity. So he actually actively dislikes InterVarsity. He's like, they don't pay you enough. This is stupid. I mean, he'll go on all the lists about why InterVarsity is dumb, but he gives a lot of money to InterVarsity because he believes in me and has connected me with other people in his life that have finances. And then and just overall, you're going to stay on staff if you're an average, 3 to 4 years, hopefully longer, right? But the other thing is when this shift towards ministry, MPD as ministry took place for me, it just not only did it make me more focused on the relationship itself, but it's also, to me, it's the most reasonable long-term thing to do, right? Because one day you're going to leave, and the world is still the world we grew up in, which is just all about who you know, all about who you know. There are going to be people who, if you'll lean into relationship and ministry first, who will not like InterVarsity. I don't like their stance on sexuality. I don't like their politics. I don't like this. I don't like that. I think it's a dumb ministry, but they'll give to you anyways because they've stopped thinking about IV and they've started thinking about Mani and Giovanni. And so these same people, you know, give me job offers. One of them actually offered to start a whole nonprofit, say, hey, stop working for InterVarsity. They don't pay you enough, all these different things. And it's like, I'll start a whole nonprofit and I'll pay you whatever you want. And you can just do what you're doing now, but you won't have to work for InterVarsity, right? So it's interesting, right? But it's just who you know. And it's all been about this relationship building. And so, but it started from this MPD shift. So go to the next slide. I'll breeze through this quickly because I mean, if you're on staff, you have to be pretty intuitive. Like, you know, no one's watching your every interaction with students and stuff. But largely, I was context shaping my MPD appointments to my gifts. So I'm an evangelist, and I'm a pretty good vision caster. And so I started evangelizing with my donors. But the thing about that, they've never had someone evangelize with them. Like say, hey, do you know how to do this? No. Here, go with me. We're going to go to this barbecue place and we're going to pray. I'm going to ask the Lord maybe to put somebody on my heart. But if he doesn't do anything, I'm going to do it anyways. I'm going to walk you through what I do and how I try and witness, in my daily life type thing. And he had never had that experience. And there's a really crazy story, but it'll take too long. Maybe in the QA, I'll tell you about it. But just these moments where ministry partners are having the gospel open to their eyes because we did that instead of sitting down and like trying to make small talk for an hour, which is boring and I hate, right? So I started shaping the meetings to sort of my gifts and strengths and starting prayer groups and making times for witnessing and different things I felt like could showcase my gifts and my strengths. Because when I'm doing that, they're starting to see me as a minister instead of as the guy who's asking for money. Those are very two different things, right? When your supporters can start to see you as a minister or a missionary who they happen to support rather than the person they know nothing about, but they've heard about your org and they're going to give money somewhere. I mean, obviously, we'll take all the dollars. We will take all of them, no matter how they get there. But one is a lot better than the other because people want to tell the story about India and how India prayed for her and like, what is this listening prayer? I've never done that before. And like, and now it's a whole story and they want to tell other people about that rather than, oh yeah, this is my other appointment with the campus minister which ministry is it? I don't know. It's probably the crew. I'm not sure. It's one of them, like it's a very different thing. And so I started changing the way I wrote my newsletters. I started thinking about them instead of as fundraising letters, as missionary letters. So I tell the hard stories. Oh, I was at the hospital. A student tried to commit suicide. This is what's happening. Here's how our community is trying to. Most of my newsletters, I wouldn't say they're depressing, but they're like kind of hard stuff. Like 9 out of 10, they're hard stuff. But when people read them, they think about me as a missionary instead of as this happy-go-lucky guy who sits on campus playing, playing spades with college students, right? Or it's a whole different thing. Same thing. I'm sharing stories of ministry that go along with my strengths, because then when I'm interacting with them and those strengths come out again, they're connecting the dot. Like, oh, like Giovanni is like an amazing Bible teacher, and then she sat down and showed me what she does with like students, and like blew my mind, right? So now they're having these relationships develop in their own thinking. And then finally, a lot of what Shalir was saying about like being like, oh, I'm worth it. Like this is getting to sit down with ministry partners who time and time again, I mean, let's just keep it hot, right? Like the American church is, she's the bride of Christ, but she's struggling, she's out here. And it just means that most of our donors have never, I mean, unless they were a part of a campus ministry, they've never sat down with someone who cares about their spiritual life. They just never have, and certainly not with any frequency, right? And so we get to be that for them, these context-defined frontline missional evangelists, right? And they not only need our gifts in their lives, but they need to see what we're seeing on campus. Like we're on the front lines, we're doing the work. And they don't quite know that because, campus ministry is considered like the Bush League of mission work, until you go on the campus and you realize this is not what it is, right? And so it's our job to help tell them that story. And so the more I've leaned into that, the easier it's been for me to lean into the gifts and into the appointments. And so I want us to do a little, yeah, thank you. So we're gonna do a little exercise, and then I think we're gonna switch to Shalir, and then maybe at the very end. Shalir, we're doing Q&A at the very end, right? Okay, cool. And if anything comes up in the chat, it's like, oh, I need to know more about that, and I may not get the chance to ask in the QA, just put it in the chat. But I wanted us to break into groups and just do this little case study. And you can pick one, and just sort of say, like, if you're Sasha, if you're Liam, and I said it's Liam because every third kid is named Liam, which I feel like is true. But if you're Sasha or Liam, like, what are the ways you might share with them, hey, you need to put that into your MPD appointments. Like you need to find a way to live around that. And maybe what are the ideas you might actually come up with? And they can be super, super obvious, or they can be less obvious. But I was hoping that this would help us jog our memories, because then we're going to do it for there's going to be time later to do it for yourself too. To be like, oh, I have some gifts. Have I used them in an MPD context? And why not? What's stopping me? So how about you pick one of these, Sheila? I'm not sure if we talked about how we were going to break up the groups.
I'm just going to do an automatic thing.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
I've already done it. And I'm going to take you out the room, Bray. Room 1, or I guess y'all won't know. The room with India, y'all are going to do Sasha, and the room with Imani, y'all are going to do Liam.
And I know we're probably over time because,
Yes, so I guess y'all have till 2. How long do they need? 3 minutes, 4 minutes?
Yeah, let's do 3 or 4 minutes.
All right, so I'll start the room closing in 3 minutes, but then you'll have the extra minute to keep talking.
Yeah, so don't be shy, get to the talking and whatnot.
Yeah, all right, go. Bye.
Bye.
Don't you leave, Brent.
Okay, cool. Shalir.
Huh?
You're on the wrong side.
Oh, my bad.
I think it's So hey, we're gonna just debrief real quick, and we're gonna add in, so you can either talk about, oh, this is what we, thought about with Sasha, Liam, or whatever. But also you can just think about for yourself, maybe some thoughts already came to mind of like, oh, like I think these are some gifts I have, and maybe here's an idea or whatever. So whatever comes up for about another 5 minutes, and then we'll head into a quick break. But yeah, so tell me what came up for you guys, or what sort of were you thinking? Yes, Johnny. And in fact, I'll shoot you an email while someone shares something, I'm sure.
I can go.
Yeah, please.
I think in the terms of like gifts, this is non-biblical, but I do storytelling. Like I love podcasting and whatnot, and so kind of using that as a way to connect to MPD donors. I'm not sure, but I just enjoy storytelling. I enjoy taking people, I guess, on a ride or connecting different ways. So I don't know, like that's like the first thing I think about. I would need more time to think about like biblical or gifts.
Oh, sure, yeah. And I said that because one of the things me and Mike do is, like, I ran track in college, and he's like a master's decathlete track guy, So we'll go to the track together. Like that's probably most of what we do, right? We'll jump together. So that's like, I mean, whatever. That's when I think about recently, when I'm thinking MPD with Mike, I'm like, okay, let's go to the track, right? And so, yeah, I mean, and you can get pretty creative of like, if you're a storyteller, and that's something that resonates with you, sitting down with the donor and like putting an outline of like, hey, like, what's the story of Mike? Like, hit me with like 5 of like the key moments in your life that have shaped you. It's this conversation, but it's a different type of conversation. It makes people feel like, wait, aren't we here to talk about money? And it's like, no, we're not here to talk about money. We're here to talk about like me and you type thing. So yeah, anybody else?
I love that point. Something that came up in our group was figuring out like the need. So for the second person, Liam, he has giftings in teaching Bible study or leading Bible study. And so trying to assess what the needs of the person that he's meeting with is, and then figuring out how he can apply his gifting. So let's say there's a church that the person is connected to that maybe doesn't have a Sunday school teacher. Maybe Liam could become a Sunday school teacher part-time, or he could train people and allow them to flourish in their giftings. And in that way, he's not also burdening himself with another responsibility of something to do.
Yeah. I mean, that's great. Like one of the things that's helped me make connections and build funding has been getting connected with churches, but not in an asking capacity. Like saying, hey, I'd love to come teach a seminar on the differences between millennials and Gen Z for your church, for all the high school parents. Like it's, I don't want to think about it in a money term, but like that's, even if there's 20 people that come to that, right? That's 20 different people who have high school students who are worried about their students going to college, who now, oh, what do they know? Now they know a campus minister, right? And it's really, really easy to build connections there. So, and same thing with like Liam. If Liam's like, oh, I like to cook, I like to teach my students to cook. It's nothing to go to church and say, or meet up with someone and say, hey, like, do you cook? Like, yeah, whatever. It's like, well, hey, would you like to come teach my students how to make a dish or something? But now you have someone who's involved, right? And it's not that deep, right? It's just thinking about MPD. For me, it's been, I told Shalir this, like I do MPD twice a year. I mean, I don't. I'm always doing MPD, but at least in the eyes of my boss, but not really. Like I'm just meeting up with people, which is what I do all day long, anyways. Like, but I don't make dollar asks except for 2 times a year. I'm asking once for the year to come and once for the year ahead. And in between, I'm just building a relationship, right? And that's something that I did to take the pressure off for me from being like, oh, I got to ask for money. And it's like, because I know if I start thinking that way, I'm going to treat the meeting differently than I would if I was just sitting down with a student, right? And that's not the setting I'm most effective in, right? Otherwise, I'd be doing something else other than campus ministry. Um, so I would say whatever things that you can do to sort of free yourself up to say, okay, what do I need to do to put the stress of the finances off a bit and just to build the relationship, because that relationship is what matters. And so I raised about like $130,000 this year, and I'm now partly was for other people. So all of you on the call, like I can't give to you maybe this year, but I'd like to. Like so you should let me know if you're having a funding issue because that's what I want to do. I want to raise $300,000 next year. I think I can do it, right? But it's about the relationships more than the ask, right? Deep relationships where people now want to be sacrificial because they're like, man, I believe in what Amani's doing. Like, really, not just because I read the newsletter, but because she prayed for me and she prayed something. I don't know if it was the ancestors. I don't know. It was a spirit of a praying Black grandmother, but something happened there, and I want to be a part of that. So maybe anything else before we get into our break and listen to Shalir, but any parting thoughts or comments or gifts that you think you might be able to turn to good advantage in MPD? Okay, well, I'm gonna pray for us. Giovanni, it's Giovanni Smith. I'm gonna shoot you an email. But if anybody else wants to connect more about some of this, obviously there's like Q&A at the end, but anything else that I can do, love to be a resource. Yeah, let me pray for us and then we'll head into a 5-minute break and then Sheila is going to help us out. So, Lord, thank you for the gifts that you've given us. Would you bring to our minds the ways that you've empowered us, created us uniquely, and maybe any ways you want us to use that in every area of our life? Like if there's any things in MPD that we have been ignoring or not utilizing to its fullest capacity, would you bring them to mind? And would you give us dreams and ingenuity on how to use it well? Pray all this in your name. Amen. So let's take a 5-minute break and then we'll come back and Julia will teach us.
All right, so I am going to shift us into some very, I'm going to say this is super practical information about MPD. And so Brent has really opened our minds to just the different ways that we can engage with our partners as we're trying to get the appointment or make the ask. And so this is now information of what do you do when you're on those appointments or when you need to follow up with them after they said they're going to give a gift. All of those types of things is information that I am going to share with you. And all of these are just things that I've learned or things that I've done in my shifts after being coached. And so similar to Brent, I like my first 3 years on staff, I was also working as an engineer, also a seminary student. So I was more bivocational with InterVarsity. And then in 2016, I shifted into full-time ministry with InterVarsity. And by 2018, I was like, I think I'm going to have to leave InterVarsity and go back to engineering or something else because my funding wasn't in a good place and they wanted to cut my pay. And I'm like, I got a whole mortgage. And so then I got coaching and it literally just changed what MPD looked like for me. And for me, so this is particularly for those that have networks or have connections or have people, and now you're just trying to make something shake. And so I also was working with a lot of different campuses. And so I, like Brent, I don't do MPD all the time. It's kind of like you have your summer months and then those December months kind of things. But then there were also like goals that I had for myself each month that I would set. And so just as we're even looking at the different types of ministry partners, this is something that was put together by Tim, who worked with me last year for the same training. And he talked about the idea of 3 different types of ministry partners. And I thought this was super helpful because we kind of see everyone as the same. And because if we see everybody as the same, we're going to approach everybody the same. And what that does is that stifles our opportunity to really be able to connect with the right, the amount of people that we need to be able to get the yeses that we're praying for. And so first things first, in your list of people that you have in a varsity, make sure you put together that whole potential donors list. And I know when I asked my staff to do that, I'm just like, anybody that's everybody. If they in your phone book, they are a potential giver. If they're your Facebook friend and y'all interact, in my mind, they're a potential giver, right? Like anybody that you're connected to, they are in your network. So they are potential ministry partners. And so you're going to have different types of people in that list. You got your low hanging fruit. You got your people that's kind of like middle in the, kind of hang. And then you got those that's high in the branches. And a lot of the high in the branches people, those are the people that what Brent was sharing, you're probably going to have to do that with them. They're people that you're very distant from. They might not like in a varsity. They might not like church. They might have issues with you. Like we don't know, right? And so part of it is ministering to them, connecting with them, and just getting them to a place of trusting you, trusting in the varsity, and trusting the idea of partnership. So that's their high in the branches people. Some of those middle hanging people, you might also have to do some of those things as well because of their lack of knowledge of who InterVarsity is, or the lack of a concept of what even a missionary is, right? But then you have your low hanging fruit, right? And sometimes we spend so much time focusing on the people that's super high in the benches and in the middle that we miss out on the low hanging fruit. And those are our first people that we can go to and get those first few yeses that keeps us encouraged and keeps us wanting to go in the midst of very hard and trying times, right? And the low hanging fruit are those people who may, even if they don't understand in the varsity, they might have some concepts of what missions work is. They might not even need a full meeting. You can probably shoot them a text and then they'd be like, oh yeah, sure, I'll give to you because you're Shalir, right? That's your low hanging fruit. And so as you guys think of your list, I'm assuming everybody's put together a list. And I've been doing this with my staff. And I'm going to say sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So these are not do this and you're going to get funded. These are do these, try these things and see what the Lord does with your funding. Okay. So I'm just going to be very honest about that. But typically when you have your low hanging fruit and you reach out to them and you're connecting with them, I can't say that I've always done a case study. I've probably, I'm going to say 20% of the time I've done a case study. And typically that's with church or a case study, the case statement. And that's typically with churches or like a small business or somebody that needs this professional presentation. Somebody I don't really know very well, I might pull out the presentation. But if it's my cousin or it's my friend from high school, whatever, most of the times it's literally either a text, just, hey, this is what I'm doing. Or we get together and we just chop it up. And in the midst of chopping it up, then we bring up InterVarsity, right? And so as you look at your list, I want you, this, like I said, it's going to be very practical. I want you to pull out your MPD donor list. And I just want you to kind of look through it. And just all I want you to do is, who are your low hanging fruit that you have not connected with? So some of you guys have already done your MPD, but who are your low hanging fruit? And whoever those people are, I want you just to put like an L next to them. So who are the low hanging fruit? People that pretty much are super connected to you. I tell people it's people that you've probably talked to in the last 3 months or so. If they're people who you might have put up a picture of yourself and said that you were going to be doing InterVarsity and they like the picture, low hanging fruit, right? So who are the people that are on your list that they probably don't need a whole meeting, but they just need something to know that you're doing this. And then they might be open at least to connect with you, meet with you, to see what the Lord might do with partnering with you. So everybody just right now, just for a minute or so, just go through your list and who are your low hanging fruit? And then after you have done it, if you want, you can, I don't know, however you want to identify who they are. Then I want you just to unmute yourselves and tell us how many people that is in your list, what you consider low hanging fruit. So I'm gonna give you about 30 more seconds, and then hopefully that gave you enough time, and then share how many people are low hanging fruit from your list. All right, let's hear it. How many low hanging fruit do you guys have in your list?
14.
14. Others?
Ten for me.
10 from India. Crystal has 5 from her list this week.
Most of the people I think I already asked. So of just who I was able to get through, I saw 3.
3?
Mhm.
Okay. Cool. So what would it look like to connect with those people even in this next week? It's not like you said 50 people, right? Everybody said anywhere from 3 to I think the most, which was Imani, who said 14 or 15 people, right? What would it look like to put together a text message and just put yourself out there, right? And all the time before anytime I hope you guys do this, before you go into an appointment, I hope you spend some time in prayer before you go. And so before you send a text message, what can you put in a text message that you can send to this person to invite them to support you? Right? And I want to encourage you guys to take the time to do that just this week. Taking the time to, I don't know, we'll say 10 minutes to craft a text message. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll put together a text message, like kind of like my template. And then I'll literally, same thing, I don't know if y'all do this, but I used to do this with follow with my students. I would have a text message and it was pre-written. And then the first 2 lines of the text message was always a personal note to them. So it felt like a personal message, but it was also a cookie cutter message. So what would it look like to put together a cookie cutter message that's just like, hey, how are you doing? Hope you know, are you going to be doing anything for July 4th? You know, I know we all on this Juneteenth from Texas, all about Juneteenth, right? But hey, are you going to do something fun this weekend? You know, it might be just something simple like that. Or hey, you just got married. Congratulations. Your boo is nice. You know, whatever. I don't know. And then actually go into, hey, you know, I don't know if you saw, but I'm working with InterVarsity now. InterVarsity is this ministry, if you're a part of it as a student, that has changed my life. And now I'm ready. Oh, or hey, I see you got that raised. Part of InterVarsity, and now I am looking to build together, you know, some partners who can surround me as I'm going forth in ministry. Would love to invite you to give $25 a month to support the ministry, and just keeping it like direct, simple, to the point. And again, these are low hanging fruit, right? And so they have high trust of you. And so they might say yes for that very reason. And if not, they might respond and say, oh, I don't know if I can give right now. And then you can say, totally understand. Would love to get a moment with you to be able to meet up with you and connect with you so we can pray together, or we can, and so then you can use that to get the relationship or to get things moving. And so what does it look like to approach your list based on what type of partner this person potentially might be, whether they're low hanging, middle hanging, or high hanging fruit? Okay. So the other thing to realize is there's different types of relationships that we're connected to, right? There's people that are more personal relationships, and then there are people that are not as personal, right? So personal relationships are, they're your family member, or they're your spouses or, mate's family member, or they're friends of yours, or you're connected to them through ministry, or they're students. I had one of my staff that reached out and said, can students give to InterVarsity? I'm like, of course, they're partners, right? But then you have your non-personal relationships. These are just people that are kind of loosely there, whether it's people through social media, or coworkers, or classmates that you're not super close to, or people that have advocated for you in the past, right? There are different types of relationships. And I think a lot of times, similar to how we do the exact same thing, no matter what type of fruit they are, I think we do the exact same thing, no matter what type of relationship they are, right? We approach our cousin the same way that we approach this small group member that we have at church, but they're different relationships. And because there's different relationships, that requires a different type of approach with them. Not only when you're trying to set up that first appointment, but also in follow-up. The reality is, depending on the type of relationship there's a certain distance that if you're not careful, you can actually create so much distance that it hurts the relationship instead of helps it, right? And if we go in with that mentality of just trying to get them to give, we can sometimes hurt the relationship so much so that now we've broken something that was potential for God's kingdom, even within our own networks, right? And so we have to realize that there are people on our list that are personal relationship, and then there are people who are non-personal. And as I've kind of looked at that and what it looks like to actually approach different people based on relationship, one of the things I had to do is remember that all of this is about partnership. So similar to Brent, for Brent, his real push is the fact that MPD is a ministry. And for me, MPD is all about partnership. That's where I'm always strategically thinking about how can I partner with these people in a way that's going to be a blessing to them, but also be a blessing to me, right? And be a blessing to our students. And so even just a few minutes ago, I was meeting, literally right before I jumped on this meeting, I was in a MPD appointment with a pastor from a church. And this pastor already gives to the ministry. But as we were talking, I was telling him, I would love if your church would provide people that can volunteer with the ministry and just mentor our students. And he was like, oh, I had never even thought about that. What are the qualifications? They love God and want to work with college students. That was it. I'm like, it's nothing deep. And he was like, wow, that actually would be really cool. And so then we just started dreaming up what could happen with his members starting to volunteer and partner with the ministry in a way that's more than just finances, right? And so if all you do is see MPD as this opportunity to get money in your pocket, I'm telling you, you're going to struggle. But if you can figure out ways to grow it so it's not just about the fundraising, but there's about this real true partnership, there's so much that can come from it. I remember meeting with one of my friends who's an alpha, and he was like, what if the men in our chapter started to do something with the men in your InterVarsity ministry? And I'm like, bet. Now, not only is that going to be exciting for the students that want to be alphas, but then also this just gives us an opportunity to have more people that gets introduced to the ministry through something that's non-traditional from an InterVarsity standpoint. The second thing is contextualization, which Brent talked about earlier. You have to contextualize. You got to figure out, okay, if you are going to do your case statement, you might have a case statement that's set up for your friends. Then you might have a case statement that's set up for your church partners. You might have a case statement that's set up for your family members, right? And one presentation might be 30 slides and another presentation might be 3 slides, right? but how do you contextualize what you have for the people or the relationship that you're connected to? Then realizing that your personal and non-personal relationships serve a different purpose in your life, right? I have some best friends, and my best friends, as much as I would love for them to be ministry, well, most of them are, but as much as I want them to be my ministry partners, I want them to be my friend first. Like that's what's most important. We've been friends since high school. I don't want us to like all of a sudden throw away a 15-year relationship because I was hounding you trying to get you to give to my ministry, right? It just serves a different purpose. And so how do I look at my relationships and realize what purpose does this relationship serve? And then how do I make sure that ministry partnership development doesn't kill that relationship? And then lastly, just realize at the end of the day, MPD is a part of our job description. Like literally one of the things that you are supposed to do, one of your job responsibilities is MPD. And so how do you be professional in your approach? There are some people that just see it as like, oh, it's almost like you're selling candy bars, right? We're not selling candy bars. Like a part of this is our job. We're getting paid and we have to raise support for it, but this is our like professional job. And so how do you approach, even when you're working with people, when you're sending out your text message, how do you craft it in a way that it doesn't feel like, oh, I'm just reaching out as Joe Blow, but I'm actually reaching out as Imani Taylor, campus staff minister for InterVarsity Christian Fellowship, right? How, when you send your emails, do you make sure that you're sending emails that don't have a bunch of typos in it, right? Like these little things that you think like, oh, it's okay. I'm just sending this to Aunt May. But Aunt May gonna look at that and be like, oh, my poor baby can't even spell. Like, you know, like it's professional. Professionalism is important, right? And so how do we make sure that as we're dealing with these different types of relationship, we have the right level of professionalism, we're considering purpose, we're contextualizing the presentation, but we're also recognizing based on the level of relationship, there are different opportunities for me to partner with them more deeply. And so we're pressed for time, and I'm big on making sure we get out on time, but I want to do this one case statement. A case study. And so I'm just going to kind of read it out as a like example. But I think one of the hardest things that I find is people closing out the gift. That's where the relationship part usually kind of, yeah, that's where there could be some issues, right? So if you got a friend and your friend already said, oh yeah, I'm gonna give you $50 a month, but then you're reaching out and they not listening to you, but then you saying happy birthday and then they respond, but then you say something like, you got people that do that, right? You like, hey, you want to go to the movies? They respond. And you say, did you see my text about InterVarsity? And then they don't say nothing, right? So how do you make sure that they still connect? How do you make sure that you approach them in a way that they understand the professional nature of your business, but then you also consider the relationship as well? So this is an example. We got Claire and Ashley, they're friends. They had an appointment. Claire actually makes this ask, Ashley gives, and now Claire has been trying to get connected to Ashley to give the money, and Ashley just kind of has disappeared. So if we're thinking about relationship, we're thinking about our gifts, as Brent said, we're thinking about being professional. How might you reach out to Ashley or connect with Ashley so that she actually responds and she gets her gift set up in the portal? What might be a way that happens? What do y'all think? If you were in this situation, what might you do?
I might ask to like set up a time just to hang out. And then while we're hanging out, or towards the end of our time, just be like, hey, like, I know you said you were going to give. Do you mind if like I can help you set it up right now if you want?
Yes, good. So using relationship, like for some reason we just forget that we were friends, and then we don't even call them just to hang out or call them just to connect like we would on a typical basis. Because now we're just like, oh, I don't even know if Ashley gonna want to talk to me because I gave her the presentation. I've been following up about the money, right? there's still a relationship there. And so great job, Jasmine. Like just hit her up, hang out. And in the midst of hanging out, you can talk about it, right? I have a staff that's raising support right now. She's actually a student intern. And she was like, last week she had reached out, she had sent out her messages and some of her family members didn't respond. But just so happens that this past weekend, all of her family were getting together to watch her brothers run track. So she was like, yeah, Shalir, my plan is as soon as I get to the track meet, we're going to hang out. And then when we eating dinner, I'm just going to ask them, hey, did you get my message? And she was like, but she can do that because of relationship. This is her cousin, her aunts, her uncles. And so what does it look like to remember that there's still a relationship there? It's like we kind of just have turned into looking at our networks as a bunch of money bags, and we forgot that we had a relationship with them in the first place. All right. The second thing, and we're not gonna do this case study, but just wanna share this. Use technology to your advantage, okay? You got Facebook Messenger. If you don't have somebody's phone number, more than likely they may or may not look at their email. But the beauty of Facebook Messenger and Instagram Messenger is it tells you if they read the message. And so I have turned to using Facebook Messenger and Instagram Messenger. But what I do is I'll send a message if I've seen that they've read it in a very nice way. After a couple of days, I'll say, hey, I saw you read that message. Just wondered if you have any questions about it, right? So bringing it back up. And typically that got people to respond to me. And so how do you use these different avenues of technology to your advantage? I think is really important. And then just remembering, I mean, we're talking, so I'm going to say particularly from the perspective of typically when you're dealing with Black people, we're very direct people. So I'm sure you have reached out to some people, you sent them your appointment letter and they're like, what is this about? Just tell me what it's about. Like they don't want all of the extras. And they were like, yeah, but I got to set up this appointment. No, if they say, what is this about? You better tell them what it's about and ask. Like, don't waste time, energy trying to do all of the things that you learned from InterVarsity because you're going to end up with no money. All right. Like if somebody responds and they say, what is this about? Oh, okay. Then make the ask, share a little bit about it, and then just go and make the ask. It's okay. Right. If someone says, okay, yeah, I'll meet up with you for an appointment, and you get there and they say, oh, I don't need to see that presentation. Please don't pull out the presentation anyway. If they say they don't want to see it, don't show it to them. Just be like, okay, and then tell them about what you're doing. Okay. The case study and the case statement, in my opinion, helps you to organize your thoughts, helps you to organize what you need to share, and helps you to organize what you need to communicate. The people on the receiving side almost never care about it. And I've done this with white folks, Asian, I've done it with a whole bunch of people. And most times they're like, can we not do that? Can you just tell me about it? Someone said earlier that they're a great storyteller. Just tell stories and that might get people to give, right? If you're someone that prays really well, like spend time and ask them, hey, what are some things I can be praying? I know we were supposed to talk about InterVarsity, but I would love to pray for you in this moment, right? So what does it look like to use your gifts, to consider relationship, and to be direct in your approach? Now, if there are indirect communications that's happening, if you're dealing with someone from a more indirect background, then yeah, you have to tread differently, right? But remember the note of there's low-hanging fruit, there's mid-hanging fruit, and there's high-hanging fruit. And depending on relationship and depending on where they stand on the fruit tree, all these pieces come together as you look at how you approach it so that you can get yourself funded. Okay. So I know we're at the end of time, but I want to give you guys an opportunity to ask questions. I know that was a lot of information, but I want to give you an opportunity to ask any questions you might have. And then Dabney will be sending out this recording, as well as I'm sure you'll get Brent and my information if you have more questions. We had to kind of shorten a few of our things. So there's always more stories, there's always more tips. But again, we've been on this journey for 7 or 9 years. And so we've been there. We probably have experienced whatever you might be experiencing, we probably have experienced it 10 times over. And so we're also available for you just as an extra resource. So any questions specifically that you guys have as we close out our time? Did we just do that great of a job?
When you got it, I guess. This is how it is.
No questions? No questions?
I do have a question. You guys did kind of touch on it, but I still am like, I don't really know practically, like, so I really want to use MPD as like opportunities for discipleship. Or yeah, as discipleship as a way to build a relationship as well. And I know like Brent, you had mentioned that you like to use evangelism, your evangelistic gifts in MPD. And I've also wanted to do that too, but I just don't know practically what that would look like. Because not necessarily for to teach them how to do evangelism with other people, but more so if I'm having an MPD meeting with somebody who's not a Christian, but they are friends with me, and they really trust me. They just want to hear more about InterVarsity. Like, yeah, I guess, what do you suggest in those cases?
Yeah, and if I'm answering a question you didn't ask, just stop me, because I want to make sure I'm understanding your question. But yeah, I think in general, like I have a few friends that are not believers, and when I'm talking with them about IV, I'm specifically sharing stories about, and this is my context because I live in the South. In the South, everyone's a Christian, but nobody knows Jesus. And then if you do say you're not a Christian, then it's like a very weird thing. And so whatever, but with either way, with these friends in particular, I'm sharing stories of meeting students with doubts and questions with like generosity and kindness. And that has gone a really, really long way. It's also been evangelistic in that I'm saying to my friend, well, I won't say his name. Anyways, I'm saying to my friend, oh yeah, like I had a student, she got a divorce and then a miscarriage, and she's trying to figure out, does God even care about her at all? Like, who is this God that lights his own house on fire and now wants praise because he put it out? Like, and which is a real story. So I'm talking to people who fit in that category about these stories and saying to them, like, and here's how InterVarsity like treats those people. Like we're saying, oh yeah, those are fantastic questions. Like you're not dumb. That makes all the sense in the world. I am walking, and being a community to it, right? So these people who are not believers, like they still don't believe, like necessarily, right? But they're like, oh, I haven't ever seen a community like that, and I want to invest in a community like that. That's like opening, it's open and welcoming, and so that may not get to your specific question, and I'd love to, shoot me an email because I'd love to help you think through that more if that's helpful. But yeah, in my context, that's what I'm normally doing, sharing stories of people who are skeptical, hurting, questioning, and sort of saying, here's how the Ivy community responds to them. We don't like say, you're sinning, don't you dare talk to God, who are you, like that's not what we're saying. And so that is really, especially in the South, like in my context, that's like novel for them. Like, wait, what? Like, really? Like, oh, it's amazing. I wish I'd had a place like that where I could just like have help with my issues and not have people like force something, so
Yeah.
but obviously it's context, it's case by case. Go ahead, Shirley.
I was just gonna say, and Jasmine, even like how I was saying your approach, right? If you have a non-believing like potential donor and you want to evangelize to them, treat them like you would treat a student, right? How do you just start a conversation with them? If you're in the appointment, if you feel like the Lord is saying, use this appointment to help them understand me, then use the appointment to help them understand him. Like you don't have to go in and share your case statement or make an ask at the end. You could just use that appointment to share about Jesus and then say, all right, happy you said yes to Jesus. And then in your own prayer time, say, Lord, this person is now connected to you. Can you help give me another opportunity to connect with them, to now share with them about the ministry? Right. And that's why I'm trying to help you guys to realize, like, I think if you automatically just look at everybody as an MPD appointment or an opportunity to get funded, then you're actually missing the point of ministry partnership development, right?
Yeah.
How do you give people what they're supposed to be getting in that moment and in that time, and then trust God to then open the opportunities for you then to get the financial parts of what you're hoping for? Does that make sense? And so, yeah.
Oh, word.
Go ahead.
That was very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. And so, and that's with everything. If you're meeting with, I've met with partners and we're talking about InterVarsity. And then in the midst of talking about InterVarsity, I had this partner this one time who was sharing about her mother. And she was like, I don't know if I can give right now because my mom is really sick. She's in the hospital, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, well, can we pray for your mom right now? And then we just sat there and we just prayed. Like, we just spent time in prayer. And then when it was over, she was like, I'm so sorry I can't give. I said, maybe that wasn't the point of this meeting. Maybe the point of this meeting was for me to pray for you. And she was like, wow, Shalera, thanks. Like, and then that was it, right? And the relationship is still there. Anytime she sees things about InterVarsity, she's like, oh, I'm so grateful the ministry is going well. And that's a relationship that maybe 5 years from now, I can then go back to and be like, hey, I know, we've been praying for your mom. She's doing much better now. Is there ways that we can talk about partnering with ministry now, right? So like in the moment, think about the relationship. Think about what the Lord wants you to do in the midst of that appointment. Think about and I train people to do case statements and train people to understand how to share their case so that you can get comfortable about sharing your case. When you're first starting out, you need to share your case so that you understand how to share the ministry. But once you understand what the ministry is and how to communicate that, use your appointments to do what the Lord needs you to do in those appointments so that eventually when it's time and the Lord gives you the opportunity to make an ask, you can make an ask.
Yeah.
And now focus on the low hanging fruit, the people that you could just send a text, get your yes, and get your little small chunk to get to the finish line.
And what I'd also say about that too, because that's really good, Shalera, is when Shalera prays for that woman's mom, and at the end it's like, oh, finances, which, it's like, we don't care anyways. It's like, come on, God's bigger than that. But like, she also gains an advocate, right? Because now that woman knows not just Shalera as the one who gave a ministry presentation, but Shalera as the one who did ministry with her, right? And that's a way different thing. And it becomes way easier to say, hey, I know you can't give, but would you be in charge of gathering a prayer group for the chapter at at your church or whatever? Like, would you host a dinner? Would you invite? Are there any people that would be able to give, right? And then obviously maybe one day she can. And then I think the other thing too, same thing in ministry situations where, one of the first things the enemy wants to do is make you feel like you don't have enough time. Like you're running out of time. Like, oh, I think maybe my student is demonized. Oh my gosh. Or, this issue that in my student's life, they feel like they've got to handle right now or they're going to die. And obviously sometimes there's times for urgency, but a lot of that is just a trap, right? To get you kind of scared and thinking in the moment instead of like pulling back and like, oh, what does God want to do here? And I find that that's the same thing in MPD where there's so many times where it's like, oh, this is clearly not the right time to ask, or it's actually not that, my idea of what this meeting was for was completely wrong. Like, it's not what we're here for today. And once again, to take that same thing Shalera was saying, to like step back from, is this about the money or is it about ministry? And then the money comes. That prioritization is really, really, really helpful. Helps us to not waste or ruin the moment or get ahead of ourselves. And and people give to people they know and like and trust. And the more we can be good ministers and representatives of the kingdom to those people, the easier it is to say yes to a financial ask.
Very true. Thanks for that question, Jasmine. Anybody else? I know we're over time. Anybody else, just really quick, any questions that you think would be helpful? Cool. All right. Well, we appreciate, you guys being here. It's been good talking with you guys. Prayerfully, we'll see you all at some point, maybe National Black Staff Conference or something. We'll see each other. But it's been great being with you guys. I'm going to close this out in prayer. And then again, like, we're here to answer questions. If you need script, I've written a whole lot of little scripts, text scripts of like, this is what I send when I'm following up. Like I said, I mean, it's been so many years that now I just got it all written out. So if you need, like, man, I don't even know what to say in a message, I can send you some scripts over if that would be helpful. And so you'll have our contact information to be able to do that. And we can go from here, and we're just going to be praying for y'all's funding. Yes, please. All right, Jasmine. I will. Oh, in India, I see that. Okay, so I'll make sure to put. I have it because I had to send it to them last year. I just remembered that because Crystal is one of my staff, and I was trying to find it last week. But I have it all written out. So it's a bunch of different scripts for a bunch of different types of cases. But you're free. Feel free to use it. I'm all about texting people because they will respond quickly, typically. So I'm going to pray us out, and then if you have any questions or need anything, just hit us up. Cool. And I'm going to stop the recording. Hold on, give me a second.